WNST, TAS in Baltimore, and WNST.net. And it's just like the Boston song. It's been a long, long time. It has been since we've gotten together. It took a little down period last week to get away, recharge the batteries a little bit. Hope everybody enjoyed our best of presentations on the backside of our Night of Heroes. But we are back in action. We'll be talking about it all week with the Stanley Cup Finals and the NBA Finals now underway. But the Orioles are the big story, as well as John Harbaugh taking a week off, and we'll get to that later. Luke Jones covers all things Orioles and Ravens. And Luke, your job was made a little easier this week, right? I mean, John Harbaugh giving the boys off this week per Roger Goodell's memos, right?
Yeah, well, I'll be at the ballpark all week, but certainly no OTAs for the Ravens, but Orioles returning back home after the long road trip, and ready to get back to the ballpark, get back into the swing of things, definitely.
Obviously, the knuckleball or just a weird, everything about when they wear the different uniforms and all of that stuff, and the Red Sox come in. You can't fault the Orioles starter, but at some point, it's very tough to get the bats moving against the knuckleball, man.
It is, and clearly a lot of people talked about the fact that the Orioles struggled so much last week in Houston. We can touch on that in a bit. But Stephen Wright, let's first of all give him some credit. This guy has been one of the better pitchers in the American League, tossed his third complete game of the month of May on Monday, and talking to a few members of the Orioles in that clubhouse, that was about as good of a knuckleball as some of those guys had seen. Maybe go back to R.A. Dickey a few years back when he was at the top of his game. And I don't know if you saw or you had a chance to see the vine that I believe it was Yahoo Sports on Twitter posted, the Stephen Wright knuckleball to Chris Davis. That looked like a wiffle ball in a 35-mile-per-hour wind. That thing was dancing left and right. And, short of a couple innings where the Orioles were able to stay, at least get right into some trouble. They had the second inning where Caleb Joseph grounded out with the bases loaded. And then in the fifth inning where I thought they had a pretty good approach, they actually were swinging early in counts, but letting the ball travel as long as possible. And 4 or 5 guys hit the ball the other way, and they had some success. But beyond that, it was a whole lot of 1, 2, 3. It was a whole lot of not really seeing where the ball was going. And even look at Hannigan, their catcher. He was really having a tough time catching the ball. And
I pray for those guys, by the way.
And again, I don't want to give the Orioles a total pass here, but Stephen Wright was on his game, and when a knuckleball is really good, that's when you see the catcher having a really difficult time catching it, and that's what you saw from Hannigan throughout the day. So it was tough, and again, tip of the cap to Stephen Wright. He's been really good, and really with some of the issues that the Red Sox have had, including David Price not being all that good here over the first 2 months of the season, he's been a big reason why they've been getting enough pitching. We know their offense. They've had the best offense on the planet over the first 2 months by a wide margin over everyone other than maybe the Cubs in the National League have been right behind them. But the Red Sox have swung it really well, and Stephen Wright has been a big reason why they've had good enough starting pitching to at least early on have the lead in the AL East with the Orioles a couple games behind.
Yeah, I guess we go big picture here. Memorial Day weekend, Orioles Red Sox. Here we go. All you can hope for. This is really the third point of the season, right? We're kind of getting up on the third pole, and they're still very neck and neck. The season's not over for any of these teams, and you can make a case for Tampa Bay. I watched the Yankees play a lot over the weekend, dude. They're a 7-inning team now, right? They're a 6-inning team, really, when it comes down to it in that bullpen. They're going to be a different team the rest of the way. But we're trying to shape who these teams are, and I guess we learn more about Tillman, about Gausman, because they really do feel like the only hope right now. And I know Jimenez is penciled in to start on Thursday, but at some point, we feel like the bats are going to be there most of the time. And I know that wasn't the case in Houston at all points last week. And sometimes when it goes south with the strikeout guys and you're striking out 15 times a game, sort of in a legendary way. But all that being said, the pitching, as it's always about the pitching, dude. We talked about the pitching in October. We talked about the pitching in December. We talked about the pitching in February. Well, here it is June, and we're going to talk about the pitching. And I don't know that they really have an answer at the bottom. I don't think we knew where the top and the bottom of this thing was. But I think the notion that we're going to go back to 14 and have 5 consistent guys, I don't know that we ever felt that way. But the Gallardo Jimenez thing right now is under great, great scrutiny, as it should be. And I'm sure as much scrutiny as you and I are going to give it, Mr. Angelos is probably more upset than anybody because he strokes the checks to these cats.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to the rotation, I mean, you said it. I mean, Tillman's been really good. Wasn't great in Cleveland over the weekend, but got enough run support, and he was good enough. I mean, he gave up 3 home runs, which had kind of been out of character. But as I told you, he wasn't going to go. But really, Tyler Wilson's been their third best starting pitcher.
We saw Tommy Hunter come around.
Better part of the last, going on 4.5 years now with, some of these fringe guys, you find a Miguel Gonzalez, you get Wei Yin Chen from, from the Pacific Rim.
I love how you call Chen Million. Well, that's a fringe guy. I mean, I'd give him all the credit.
Fringe guy, but he was still a guy that wasn't highly coveted, is my point.
No doubt.
Sure. So, but, I mean, at some point in time, if you really want your starting rotation to be able to take off, it's not from spending, it's from developing. I mean, that's just reality. I'm not saying you shouldn't spend. I'm not saying more often than not when you pay even, middle-of-the-road money, which is what Gallardo and Ubaldo Jimenez have gotten as far as free agent starting pitchers. You're going to get middle-of-the-road results. And, they haven't gotten that from Jimenez for the most part. We'll see what happens with Gallardo. But, that's been a challenge for them. And, we'll see how this is going to play out. To this point, their starting pitching, although, it hasn't trended quite as well the last 2.5 kind of pitching has been concerned about their bats. At least I'm not. I don't expect it to be the best in baseball, but I think they'll score enough runs if you get decent enough pitching. It's the same big question we've talked about since, really going on January into spring training. So, I mean, it's remains to be seen kind of situation. In the meantime, you'll take what you've gotten from Tyler Wilson overall. We'll see if he continues that. We'll see if Chris Tillman continues like,
The Astros, we thought they were a hot mess till we showed up, and it was relatively pedestrian pitching. This wasn't Keuchel on his best night with his best stuff or whatever, striking the guys out, and I guess you find the hole in the swing. There was just something really weird about that see things happen like last week. It is this team, as we talk about beer league softball, is they're going to strike out a lot. And when they strike out a lot on the same night when they're not hitting the ball,
right,
they're going to look like a bad baseball team instead of like a second-place baseball team.
Yeah, and I'll say this much. I mean, first of all, that series, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, they set a major league record with 52 strikeouts over
and let's hope we never see another thing like it again.
But that said, and look, no one ever thought this team was going to be, the Kansas City Royals, not least would be the kind way to put it. But side, which clearly was embarrassing, nightmarish, whatever you want to call it. Before that series, they were below average in terms of strikeouts. As far as the average American League, they had struck out lower than that. But it hadn't been a major, colossal problem, is my point. And one thing I want to remind everyone about, Major League Baseball the last 5-6 years, record highs around the league in terms of strikeouts. It's a bigger and bigger part of the game. And that's not to excuse the Orioles. It's just to provide some context here.
Well, you can get it strike out a lot and still make a lot of money. It's not, the way you get paid is to hit the ball a long way, right? And if you don't, nobody's...
In Houston, they had a couple games in Anaheim where they struck out a lot. Even after that insane one around the league. More velocity than you've ever seen in baseball right now. More specialization in bullpens, more flamethrowers in bullpens, more max effort starting pitchers. I mean, it's not to make an excuse for the Orioles. What they did in Houston, that can't continue to happen. And if it does, then yeah, I'll be worried like everyone else. But I'm still willing to go out there, or I'm still willing to say that was far more outlier as far as that extreme level of striking out compared to what we've seen for the most part here in 2016.
Which has been a better hitting baseball team than we thought, right?
Yeah,
I mean, all the way around,
I mean,
I don't have a lot of complaints. I thought they would strike out more. I thought they would be more station to station.
Right.
I think they run the bases like Jeff Stone a little bit, and that's got to piss Buck
they can't.
off.
I mean, they don't steal bases. They shouldn't even try to steal bases, quite frankly. I mean, they don't have guys to do it. Even Manny Machado, the one guy that they had who did it last year, I think he's gotten a little bit stronger because he's 23 now, he's a year older and another year removed from knee surgery. I think you don't want Manny Machado stealing bases. You want Manny Machado to play for the most part over the first two months of the season. But as far as the strikeouts, that on the list of things that I'm concerned about, they went into Monday about 90 strikeouts off the American League lead, which interestingly enough is it was something crazy to see up is what happens with the leadoff spot. I mean, it was clear Joey Rickard for the better part of a month had really been scuffling. I said all along, I think he's been a really nice Rule 5 pick, clearly. I think he, at the very least, is a very serviceable number 4 outfielder. I'm not convinced he's an everyday player. And, at this point in time, with Hyun Soo Kim swinging the bat better, with Nolan Reimold swinging the bat better of late, Buck Showalter is giving them some opportunities. Now, I don't think Adam Jones is going to continue to be this team's leadoff hitter, but I will credit the narrative a little bit. Let's have everyone focus on something other than just the strikeouts. And I think it worked over the weekend. We'll see what tells me. We haven't seen the last of Joey Rickard. I'm not saying we should, but my gut tells me we're not going to see Adam Jones in the leadoff spot for an extensive period of time. And I've said this, I can think back to, I want to say it was the Saturday game in Kansas City in late April, where he had a pretty good, it was, and let's face it, I mean, until this last week, he was starting about once a week. He had a pretty good game, and I said at that time, I'd like to see him a little more frequently. That's not saying everyday player or anything like that, but I saw enough from him that I was at least curious to see more.
You were the first guy that I know of that was on the bandwagon, that was tweeting you wanted to see more, was talking about it on the air.
And again, I'm not saying I know, Kim struggled in spring training, but then you always hear teams say, don't put too much stock into spring training. Then why were they so convinced that Hyun Soo Kim can't play? And look, he might start 10 of the next 14 games and hit $150 over that time, and maybe he returns to a reserve role. And you know what? So be it then. But at some point, you have to let him. You have to let him try. And my point was, the Orioles didn't have someone. They didn't have Ricky Henderson leading off and playing in left field. They didn't have
Aller. Let's throw him in there.
So my point is, let's see what he can do. I mean, clearly, whether their scouts that decided that this was a guy that was worth signing, whether their scout ended up being totally wrong or not, who knows? That remains to be seen. But you have the investment in him. You have some other guys at the position where he can play that weren't necessarily up. Give him an opportunity, and we'll see how long a month being a 240 hitter, and then at that point, who knows what you do. But I like that Buck Showalter is giving some of these guys some opportunities, and even Nolan Reimold, who, look, we know the narrative on Nolan Reimold, and I understand not wanting to just send him out there every day, given his injury history. But at the same time, he's a guy that has hit above 300 in his limited opportunities. Give him a few more opportunities, and by the way, gives you an opportunity to take Mark Trumbo out of the outfield and into the DH role. And if Pedro Alvarez is going to continue to be a sub 200 hitter, why not put Mark Trumbo in that DH role a little bit more? And at the very least, you improve your outfield defense a bit.
And Trumbo's the one guy, along with Machado, that really hasn't cooled off. And Wieters, since the last time we've chatted, and also Scope, those guys have hit the ball. Part of it now is wondering whether Chris Davis is going to get his average up.
You get into your early 30s, and that's where players start to, saying Adam Jones is washed up, but they start to be a little bit lesser version of themselves, unless you're David Ortiz, I guess, which that's another argument entirely, or a discussion entirely. But, with Jones, he's always been a free swinger. The interesting thing is he's actually shown a this year at the plate. But, you continue to hope that he gets going. He got going for he had a 7 to 10 day period early in March or early in May when he Jones when he gets into a hot streak. But other than that, it's been disappointing for him. But overall, I still look at this lineup, and again, I know a lot of fans have been concerned recently with, and certainly didn't look very good against Stephen Wright on Monday, but since nearly as much. I think they're going to be good, if not a great offense, at least a good offense, and they're going to hit home runs. And I think that's going to be something if they can continue to pitch really well out of the bullpen, pitching middle of the pack. If they can do that, even if maybe they can't overtake Boston, who knows? I mean, we'll see how it plays out over the next few months. But at the very least, I think that kind of formula puts them in position to certainly be in the wild card hunt at the very least.
Last thing for you, this kid Tolliver comes up. Such a great story. And look, I mean, when Brock came up, we saw what he really is stuck around. When they're going to go back. Here's a kid, here's a wonderful story. Obviously, Monday was not his best effort. Whatever is going to happen with Jimenez before it's all over with, and Gallardo when he comes back.
Major league level, had some good production at Bowie the last couple of years. Kind of has that 3/4. I think if I have to answer yes or no right now, I'm probably going to say no. So that's something that handed hitters, him having kind of those those splits that you love to have that are rare with bullpen arms. Michael Givens, who was really good against lefties last year, remember, got off to that really bad start early in the season against lefty bats, had been a little bit better. That just leaves one. We'll see how that plays out. He's a guy who has some major. What you really love to see with a lefty specialist is that guy that you want to be able to bring in and for one batter and just completely shut down a rally. I'm not sure Densing is that kind of guy, but we'll see how that plays out. It's not something that's a major concern of mine, but it's something that's becoming a little bit more of a concern after they were able to really kind of hide that deficiency in their bullpen for the first quarter of the season.
I'm concerned that I have a family feud going on with the Red Sox in town and my wife's birthday coinciding. So, we'll see how it all turns out before the week's over with. The Yankees come in this week. Follow his journey on Twitter at Baltimore Luke, as well as Luke at WNST.net. You can email me anytime, nasty at WNST.net. Throughout the day and throughout the early part of the week, we're going to be featuring our Night of Heroes retrospective. You're going to hear from Coach Tomlin and Coach Harbaugh and Coach Billick, as well as David Modell and the governor, Larry Hogan, as well as a lot of our proceedings here. So in between all that, I appreciate everybody kind words last week and me taking a week off. I'm out on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, anywhere you are. We're live streaming now a lot of our segments out on Facebook Live as well as on our YouTube. Appreciate all of our sponsors, everybody sticking with us. Happy June upcoming to you. We'll be at Oriole Park at Camden Yards, as well as monitoring all things NHL and NBA Finals. You can find in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault at WNST.net 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world, up by our friends at Planet Fitness Tech Service. It is the best thing we offer at WNST.net. It is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.